The power of selective silence, mastering when not to speak.
The hidden language of power. In a world where everyone is fighting to be heard, talking louder, posting more, explaining themselves endlessly, there exists a quiet force, a hidden advantage, one that only a few truly understand. Silence. Not weakness, not fear, not ignorance, but controlled, intentional silence. Because here's the truth most people will never realize. The person who speaks the least often controls the most. Look around you. Everywhere you go, people are talking, trying to prove something, trying to be seen, trying to be validated. But the real players, the ones who command attention without begging for it, they don't talk much. And when they do, people listen. Why most people talk too much? Let's start from the beginning. Why do people talk so much? It's not confidence. It's insecurity disguised as expression. People talk because they want to be liked. They want to be understood. They want to feel important. They're afraid of being ignored. So they fill every silence. They over-explain. They overshare. They interrupt moments that could have given them power, because silence makes them uncomfortable. But what they don't realize is, every unnecessary word reduces your value. Think about it. When you explain too much, you sound unsure. You give away your position. You remove curiosity. And curiosity is power. Silence creates mystery. Let me ask you something. Who do people pay more attention to? The person who talks all the time, or the person who speaks less but with intention? Exactly. Scarcity creates value, and silence creates scarcity of information. When you don't reveal everything, people start wondering. People start analyzing you. People start projecting importance onto you. They begin to think, why is he so calm? What does he know that I don't? Why isn't he reacting? And just like that, you've taken control without saying a word.
The psychology of silence. Here's where it gets deeper. Silence triggers something powerful in the human mind: uncertainty. And humans hate uncertainty. So what do? They try to fill in the gaps. They overthink your intentions, assume you have hidden strength, give you more respect than you've even asked for. This is why silence is often mistaken for confidence. Even if you say nothing, people will assign meaning to your silence. That's power. Speaking less equals saying more. Now understand this clearly. Silence doesn't mean you never speak. It means you only speak when it matters. Because when you talk less, observe more, think before responding, your words begin to carry weight. Let's compare. A man who talks all the time says, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." A man who speaks less says, "Let's do this," and stays quiet. Who sounds more powerful? The one who needs to convince you, or the one who simply acts? Exactly. Power doesn't argue. Power doesn't over-explain. Power moves in silence. Silence as control. In every conversation, there is always a subtle battle for control, and most people lose it without realizing. How? By talking too much. When you talk too much, you reveal your intentions. You expose your weaknesses. You give others material to use against you. But when you stay silent, you observe, you listen, you gather information. And information is leverage. The silent person in the room knows who is insecure, who is trying too hard, who is desperate for attention. Because people reveal themselves when they talk. Silence doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerously aware. The fear of silence. Now here's the problem. Most people can't do this, not because it's hard, but because it's uncomfortable. Silence forces you to sit with yourself, control your impulses, resist the urge to react, and that takes discipline. People would rather talk nonsense than sit in powerful silence, because silence exposes their need for validation, their fear of being overlooked, their lack of self-control. But once you master silence, you unlock something rare: presence. When you walk into a room, you don't need to announce yourself. You don't need to dominate conversations. You don't need to prove anything. Your energy speaks before you do. Silence is not weakness. Let's destroy a common misconception. Silence is not shyness, fear, social awkwardness. There are two types of silence: weak silence, driven by fear; powerful silence, driven by control. Weak silence says, "I'm scared to speak." Powerful silence says, "I don't need to speak." And people can feel the difference. So now you understand this. Silence is not empty. It is full of control, strategy, psychological advantage. But this is just the surface.
Using silence to dominate conversations and control people. Most people think power in conversation comes from knowing what to say. But the truth is, power in conversation comes from knowing when to say nothing. Because every conversation is not just communication. It's a subtle game of control. And the person who understands silence controls the game. The first rule: never rush to respond. Let's start with one of the simplest, yet most powerful techniques. Pause before you respond. When someone says something to you, don't reply immediately. Just pause, even if it's for 2-3 seconds. Why? Because that small silence does 3 things. It shows you're not reactive. It makes your response feel intentional. It creates tension, and tension creates attention. Most people are quick to respond because they want to prove themselves. They don't want to look slow. They're afraid of awkward silence. But that urgency makes them look weak. The calm person who pauses looks like someone who is thinking deeply, in control, not easily pressured. The moment you stop reacting instantly, you start commanding respect. The power of letting people talk. Here's something most people don't realize. The more someone talks, the more they reveal. So instead of trying to dominate conversations, let others do the talking. When you stay quiet, people fill the silence. People over-explain. People expose their intentions. And while they're talking, you're learning. You're seeing their insecurities, their desires, their weaknesses. This is why powerful people ask questions and then stay silent. Because silence does something dangerous. It pulls information out of people. Silence in negotiation. Now, let's talk about where silence becomes deadly effective. Negotiation. Whether it's business, money, deals, even relationships, silence can give you the upper hand instantly. Here's a classic scenario. You state your price, and then you stay silent. No justification, no explanation, no nervous talking, just silence. What happens? The other person becomes uncomfortable, and in that discomfort, they start talking. They might accept your price, try to justify their budget, even negotiate against themselves. Why? Because silence puts pressure on them, and most people can't handle that pressure. The first person who talks after a key statement usually loses power. Using silence to avoid manipulation. Not every conversation is friendly. Some people try to provoke you, try to control you, try to pull reactions out of you. And if you react emotionally, you lose control instantly. But silence blocks manipulation. When someone tries to insult you, trigger you, get a reaction, and you respond with calm silence, you confuse them because they expected anger, defense, explanation. But instead, they get nothing. And nothing is powerful. It sends a message. You don't have access to my emotions. That's dominance.
Let's talk about something that kills power instantly. Over-explaining. When you explain your decisions too much, justify your boundaries, try to make everyone understand you, you lower your value. Because high-value people don't feel the need to explain everything. Instead of saying, I didn't reply because I was busy and I had a lot going on, you simply say, "I saw your message," and stop. That silence does more than a paragraph ever could. It shows you're not seeking approval. You're not overcompensating. You're in control of your time. The art of saying less. Now understand this. It's not just about being silent. It's about saying less, but meaning more. When you speak, be direct, be precise, be intentional. Instead of long explanations, use short, powerful statements. Instead of trying to impress, let your presence do the work. Because when you speak less, people listen more. Silence builds presence. There's something called presence. It's that energy some people have when they enter a room. They don't talk much, but you feel them. That doesn't come from noise. It comes from self-control, awareness, comfort in silence. When you're not desperate to speak, your words become rare. And rare things are valuable. Practical silence techniques. Let's make this real. Here are simple ways to start using silence immediately. 1. The pause technique. Always pause before responding. 2. The last word technique. End your sentences without over-explaining. 3. The silent observation. In group settings, talk less. Observe more. 4. The non-reactive face. Don't react to everything you hear. 5. The strategic exit. Leave conversations without dragging them. Each of these builds power over time. Now you see it clearly. Silence is not passive. It's active control. But there's a level most people never reach. The level where silence doesn't just control conversations. It controls perception, attraction, and influence.
Silence, attraction, and psychological dominance. There's something strange about human nature. We don't chase what is easily available. We chase what we don't fully understand. We chase what feels just out of reach. And nothing creates that feeling more than silence. Because silence does something powerful. It creates space. And in that space, people begin to think about you. Silence creates attraction. Let's be real. Whether in business, friendships, or relationships, people are naturally drawn to mystery. When you talk too much, there's nothing left to discover. You become predictable. You lose intrigue. But when you hold back, people get curious. People want to know more. People start paying attention. This is why the person who reveals everything immediately is often forgotten. But the person who reveals little, strategically, becomes unforgettable. Mystery isn't created by what you show. It's created by what you don't. The power of unpredictability. Most people are easy to read. You know what they'll say, how they'll react, what they'll do next. There's no challenge, no intrigue, no reason to pay attention. But when you combine silence with unpredictability, you become difficult to figure out. Sometimes you speak, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you engage, sometimes you pull back. And that inconsistency creates mental engagement. People start thinking, what is he thinking? Why did he go quiet? What does that mean? And just like that, you occupy space in their mind, without trying. Silence in social power. Let's bring this into real-life scenarios. You're in a group setting. Everyone is talking, laughing, trying to be noticed. And then there's you. Calm, observant, selective with your words. You don't interrupt. You don't force attention. But when you finally speak, everyone listens. Why?
Because your silence has already built anticipation. People assume, if he doesn't talk much, then what he says must matter. That's perception. And perception is power. Silence versus desperation. Nothing kills attraction faster than desperation. And desperation is loud. It talks too much, seeks validation, tries too hard, explains unnecessarily. Silence does the opposite. It signals confidence, self-sufficiency, emotional control. When you're not constantly calling, texting, explaining, chasing, people feel it. They sense that this person doesn't need me, and that makes them valuable. And value creates attraction.
Silence and emotional control. Here's one of the most important aspects. Silence gives you control over your emotions. Instead of reacting instantly, you process, analyze, choose your response. This prevents regret, miscommunication, emotional mistakes. Because once words are spoken, you can't take them back. But silence gives you time, and time gives you power. When silence makes people chase you, let's talk about something practical. Why do people suddenly start chasing you when you become quieter? It's simple. You remove constant access. When you're always available, people take you for granted. Your presence becomes normal. Your absence means nothing. But when you're not always there, your absence becomes noticeable. People start thinking, why hasn't he said anything? Is something wrong? Did I lose his attention? And just like that, they start moving towards you. Not because you chased them, but because your silence created a gap. And humans naturally try to fill gaps. The dark side of silence. Now listen carefully, because this is where many people get it wrong. Silence is powerful, but it can also backfire. If used incorrectly, silence can make you look uninterested, look weak, miss opportunities, lose connections. If you stay silent when you should speak, you disappear. If you don't express yourself at all, people misunderstand you. So the goal is not to be silent always. The goal is to be strategically silent, knowing when to speak, when to hold back, when to engage, when to withdraw. That's mastery. Real-world examples. Let's make this real. Someone disrespects you. Weak reaction. You argue, you explain, you defend. Powerful response. You look, pause, and say nothing. Then change the topic or walk away. That silence speaks louder than any argument. Business negotiation. Weak move. You lower your price quickly and explain why. Power move. You state your price and stay silent. Let them deal with the pressure. Attraction or relationships. Weak move. Constant texting, over-explaining, chasing. Power move. You respond, but you don't overextend. You allow space. And in that space, interest grows. Now you understand something most people never will. Silence is not emptiness. It is attraction, control, psychological influence. But there's one final level, the level of mastery, where silence becomes part of your identity, where your presence alone commands respect before you even say a word.
Mastery. Becoming the silent force people respect. At the highest level, silence is no longer a technique. It's not something you remember to apply. It's something you embody. Because true power is not forced. It is felt. And the people who carry real presence don't try to be silent. They are naturally in control of themselves. Silence as identity. Let's make one thing clear. Anyone can pretend to be silent, but not everyone can carry the energy behind it. Because forced silence feels awkward. It feels unnatural. People can sense it. But when silence comes from confidence, clarity, self-control, it feels different. It feels like this person doesn't need to speak to be heard.
That's identity. And identity is what makes it effortless. Building inner control. Silence starts internally before it ever shows externally. If your mind is chaotic, your mouth will be too. If you're constantly seeking validation, you won't be able to stay silent. So mastery begins here. Control your thoughts. Learn to sit without distraction. Observe your impulses. Resist the urge to react. Because every time you feel the need to interrupt, over-explain, defend yourself unnecessarily, and you choose not to, you build power. Small moments create strong identities. The habits of silently powerful people. Let's break it down into daily habits. 1. They listen more than they speak, not to reply, but to understand. 2. They don't react instantly. They respond after thinking. 3. They are comfortable with pauses. They don't rush to fill silence. 4. They don't overshare. Their life is not an open book. 5. They walk away when necessary. They don't argue to prove a point. These habits create a presence that cannot be ignored. Speaking with precision. At mastery level, you don't talk less just for the sake of it. You speak with precision. Every word has purpose. Every sentence has weight. Instead of talking to impress, you speak to impact. Instead of explaining everything, you say just enough. Because at this level, you understand. It's not how much you say, it's how deeply it lands.
Respect without force. Here's the ultimate reward of mastering silence. Respect without trying. You don't raise your voice, demand attention, force people to listen. Yet people notice you, listen to you, take you seriously. Why? Because your silence signals confidence, emotional discipline, self-sufficiency, and these traits are rare. When to break the silence. Now this is important. Even masters of silence know when to speak, because silence is only powerful when it is used correctly. Speak when your voice adds value. A boundary needs to be set. An opportunity is in front of you. Truth needs to be expressed. Don't stay silent out of fear, out of insecurity, out of avoidance. That's not a power. That's limitation. True mastery is balance. The final transformation. At this point, you're no longer trying to use silence. You observe more, speak less, think deeper, react slower, and over time, something shifts. People begin to see you differently. They take your words more seriously, respect your space, value your presence, not because you demanded it, but because you became it. In a noisy world, silence is rare, and rare things are valuable. Most people will continue talking too much, explaining too much, reacting too quickly, and because of that, they will never understand this power. But now you see it. Silence is not emptiness. It is control, awareness, discipline, power. And once you master it, you don't need to chase attention. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to fight for respect, because your presence alone will speak for you. Talk less, observe more, and let your silence do the work.